Is everyone ready? Yes. Well, Hag Sameach Shavuot, everybody. Hag Sameach Shavuot. So we are here to celebrate a biblical festival, and that is the day of Shavuot. The Greek way of saying it is Pentecost. And we was here all day yesterday for Shabbat, and I was able to give 4 messages yesterday, and today will be a continuation of those messages. And so this would be then session number 5. And so the main subject regarding these teachings is to cause you to become more greatly aware of the historical and cultural context of the New Testament. And in order to understand the historical and cultural context of the New Testament, you need to realize that Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, the book of Acts, the information that is there and the things that we are reading about and the conversations that we are told about, that they are associated and connected with a bitter Jewish religious dispute. And that religious dispute had been going on, and I'm rounding off, for about 175 years or so prior to the birth of John the Baptist and Yeshua. So John the Baptist, or in Hebrew, Yochanan the Immerser, and Yeshua was born in the middle of this religious conflict that was deeply involved and had been going on for a long period of time. And so the core essence of the conflict was a debate and a fight over authority. In other words, who is the entity that's going to represent the God of Israel, and whose view of the Torah is going to be taught from these people. And so ultimately, the root of the conflict is going to go back to the office of the high priesthood of Israel. And following the sin of the golden calf, that is when the God of Israel established the Levitical priesthood, and he established that the office of the high priest would come from Aaron and his sons. So the fact that this was to be carried out was so important that we have a Torah portion amplifying and highlighting the importance and significance of it. And all of you are familiar with this story, with this narrative, and it's in Numbers chapter 16 and Numbers chapter 17. And there in Numbers chapter 16, we have the account of the Korah rebellion, and in Numbers chapter 17, as a result of the Korah rebellion, the God of Israel said to take 12 rods for each of the 12 tribes of Israel, and the one that blossomed and bloomed was the one that he had chosen. Of course, it was the rod of Aaron that blossomed and bloomed. And the details of Korah rebellion we may not have firmly in our mind, given that Korah, we are told in Numbers chapter 16 verse 1, was a son of Levi. He was a Levite. So we have somebody from the tribe of Levi, and if you read the narrative, they were aspiring, Korah, along with, and it says in Numbers chapter 16 and verse 2, 250 princes or leaders of the congregation that was famous in the congregation, men of renown. We're talking about respected leaders, along with Korah, and they thought that they can be a part of the leadership in as it particularly relates to the office of the high priesthood. And we see that that was what they were aspiring to, because in Numbers, in chapter 16, Moses replies to Korah and says in verse 8, "Here I pray you sons of Levi, is it such a small thing unto you that the God of Israel has separated you from the congregation of Israel to bring you near to himself, to do the service of the tabernacle of the Lord, and to stand before the congregation to minister unto them?" In other words, out of the 12 tribes of Israel, the tribe of Levi was selected and had the honor to perform the service and the things that are associated with the tabernacle. So given that they were honored above the other tribes of Israel, Moses says, is that such a small thing that the Lord has given you this blessing? But that, and it says that you desire the priesthood also. And that was verse 10. So the rebellion was specifically against the office of the high priesthood, and someone who the Lord had not designated to fill that office. He said it was only supposed to be from Aaron and his sons desired the office. And so the God of Israel didn't give us an explanation why he chose Aaron and his sons. And given that he didn't give us an explanation, and therefore one could say that it wasn't a logical decision, that this is called then a statute in the King James English. And the Hebrew word is chok, singular, or chokim, plural. And it basically means a decree by somebody that is in authority. And so if you're going to accept the one who is in authority, one way you show it is you will accept and follow their rulings, their decrees. So this was actually, from the viewpoint of the God of Israel, it was a challenge of his decree. It was a challenge of his authority. That's why what they were attempting to do was so serious, even though logically it may make some sense. I mean, these are 250 already recognized leaders of the congregation that people would respect. And so, given that, what ended up happening is there was a plague that came under the camp, and there were people, because of this challenge to the decree of the God of Israel, they died, and Moses had to intercede for them. And then in order to amplify the seriousness of this decree, and that the office of the high priesthood was only supposed to be from Aaron and his sons, we have the account in Numbers chapter 17 regarding the Lord's instruction to take 12 rods, for each of the 12 tribes of Israel, and the rod that budded was the one that he had chosen. Of course, this was Aaron's rod. So in the history of the high priesthood of Israel, Aaron had 4 sons, Nadab, Abihu, Itamar, and Eleazar. And Nadab and Abihu, they offered strange fire. We have the account in the Torah. And so they lost their lives as a lesson to the God of Israel, that you're supposed to do the service as the God of Israel instructed, and not according to your own understanding or your own desires. So this was the meaning of offering strange fire. And so this also, the offering of strange fire, was an act of disobedience. And so the God of Israel had to show the seriousness of it, and he judged it. So therefore, the office of the high priesthood then could only come from Itamar and Eleazar. So we have in the book of Samuel, after the children of Israel crossed the Jordan, was in the promised land, they set up encampment at Shiloh, or you might say Shiloh, and at a point in time that Eli the priest was the priest there. Well, he didn't disciple his sons, And so, among other things, the Lord sent a prophet to prophesy that the day would come when his house would become desolate. And so the prophet gave the prophecy, gave the confirmation of the prophecy, which was pretty intense, pretty severe. And the confirmation of the prophecy is that Eli's two of his sons would die in one day. And so we have an account in the book of Samuel that did happen. But we don't have how that prophecy was fulfilled in the book of Samuel. And things regarding the office of the high priesthood, we have an account, and this happens to be in Numbers chapter 25. An individual whose name is Pinhas, or we may pronounce it as Phineas, and we're told in Numbers chapter 25 verse 7 that he is a son of Eleazar. So there was things that happened in the camp, and Pinhas arose against it, and he did a noble deed. And because of what happened in the camp, there was a plague that broke out in the camp, and Phineas rose up, and the Lord rewarded him by telling him in Numbers chapter 25 verse 12 that I'm going to give him a covenant of peace. But then it goes on to say in Numbers chapter 25 verse 13 that I have given unto him an everlasting priesthood. So now we have a prophecy that the everlasting priesthood would come through Aaron's son Eleazar through Phineas. So of the four sons, now the everlasting priesthood is just going to go through one son in particular. And the details about how his other son Ithamar, and how the people serving that was descendants from Ithamar, how that ended, the details of the story behind that is how the book of 1 Kings starts out. And so here in 1 Kings we're told that David is on his deathbed, and as he's on his deathbed, that his fourth son, Adonijah, he proclaims himself to be the next king in Israel after David. And at the end of David's life, there were, in essence, two functioning priests, and that was Abiathar and Zadok. Well, in Adonijah making this proclamation that he was going to be king after David, it says in 1 Kings chapter 1 verse 7 that Abiathar the priest participated in this proclamation. Well, initially Abiathar was with David and was faithful to David, but here he knew David's wishes and desires, but yet he rebelled against David. And then Nathan the prophet and Zadok the priest makes it known to David on his deathbed that this had happened, and said, is this really your desires? Is this your wishes? And of course they knew it wasn't. They were just being respectful in the way that they approached him. And he said, well, I've already made it known that Solomon is going to be king after me. And so he instructed Nathan the prophet, and he instructed Zadok the priest to go and anoint and proclaim Solomon as king. And so this was done. When this happened, then Adonijah basically freaked out. And we're told in 1 Kings and chapter 1 that ultimately in verse 50 that Adonijah went and grabbed hold of the horns of the altar. Now what he was doing was he was pleading for mercy. Nevertheless, Solomon replies to him in 1 Kings chapter 1, verse 52, and says, and I'm paraphrasing, if you are innocent, everything will be okay, but if you're guilty, you are going to die. And so as David was living his last days, in order to comfort him a little bit, they sent a good-looking young virgin to comfort him. And this is the same woman that Adonijah desired and wanted to be his wife. And so he makes a request in talking to Bathsheba to go and ask Solomon if this could be so, if he would approve that. And Solomon said absolutely not, because he knew that this was going to be roots of a rebellion against him. And so he instructed then Adonijah that he would then suffer death. And then he goes and he addresses Abiathar, and he says to him, he says, because of what you did, you deserve to die also. However, on the merit that you carried the Ark of the Covenant, your life is going to be spared. I'm going to let you live. And then he proclaimed that Zadok was going to be the priest. So from the beginning of Solomon's reign, from these events, Zadok became the priest in Israel. And then all of this was told to us. And then we have the verse of 1 Kings chapter 2, verse 27. It says, so Solomon thrust out Abiathar from being priest under the Lord, and catch this, that he might fulfill the word of the Lord which he spake concerning the house of Eli in Shiloh. So this becomes the details of how the prophecy that was given back in the book of Samuel ends up being fulfilled. So from this point forward, we don't have somebody holding the office of the high priesthood in Israel that was from the line of Ithamar. The office of the high priesthood from this time forward had been narrowed down from Aaron and his 4 sons to specifically his one son, Eleazar, and then through his son Phinehas, who was promised an eternal priesthood. And Zadok the priest is of the line of Phinehas. So we can see the lineage of Eleazar through Phinehas in 1 Chronicles and chapter 6. And beginning in verse 3, it says, the children of Amram, Aaron and Moses and Miriam. And the sons of Aaron were Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar. And then it itemizes the lineage through Eleazar. Eleazar begat Phinehas. And it goes on. And then it mentions a Zadok in 1 Chronicles chapter 6, verse 8. But the Zadok here in the time of Solomon is mentioned later on in the genealogy in 1 Chronicles chapter 6 and verse 12. So Zadok the priest, who became the priest at the beginning of the reign of Solomon, he was of the lineage of Phinehas, who was of the lineage of Eleazar, and Phinehas in Numbers chapter 25 is promised in eternal priesthood. So ultimately then, from Zadok being the priest at the beginning of the reign of Solomon, all of the high priests in Israel were of the lineage of Zadok until we get to 2nd century BC. In the years, and I'm rounding off, 200 BC to 175 BC. And it's in those years that things began to change. And the last faithful Zadok priest was named Onias III. And in the extra biblical book Ben Zerach, chapter 50, verse 1, we're told in essence his Hebrew name. Onias, his Greek name, and his Hebrew name is Yochanan, or we would say John. So we have an account in Luke in chapter 1 where we're told the events surrounding the birth of John the Baptist. And we have his father, Zacharias, had an angelic visitation from the angel Gabriel. And one of the messages that came forth was that Zacharias and his wife Elizabeth was going to have a son. And we're told in Luke, in chapter 1 and verse 13, that this child's name is supposed to be named John. Now, most and many of you here are parents, and you've had children. But how many of you have had an angelic visitation to tell you specifically what the name of your child should be? So why was it so important to heaven that this child was not to be named after the custom, which is of the father, but that this child must be named Yochanan? Well, it was to show a continuity through name, the linkage is through name, of the last faithful Zadok priest, whose name was Yochanan, to now John, being that he was of the sons of Aaron, and specifically we're told in Luke chapter 1 verse 5, he was of the course of Abiah. And Yeshua recognized John as being the legitimate priest in Israel. And in order to show the importance and significance of John's ministry, we have all four Gospels at the beginning of the narrative of all four Gospels. We're told about John the Baptist and his ministry. And in John's account, in John in chapter 1 and verse 29, he proclaims that Yeshua is the Lamb of God. So when a lamb was slaughtered in the temple, the high priest had to examine the lamb to make sure it was without blemish and followed the Torah requirements, and thus affirm that the lamb was proper to be put on the altar and to be sacrificed. And so the account of the affirmation that Yeshua is the Lamb of God came from Yochanan the Immerser. It didn't come from the temple priests and the temple system. Furthermore, we're told that Yochanan, that he was immersing people. And in the book of Acts, we see that part of it is the affirmation and proclamation that people should repent of their sins and recognize and understand that the Messiah was in their midst. And of course, that Messiah is, and he was and he is Yeshua. And so then we have an account where Yeshua approaches Yochanan, and Yochanan says, whoa, you're the one to be honored. And Yeshua says, no, I must be immersed of you to fulfill all righteousness. Now, when he says to fulfill all righteousness, he's referring to following the Torah. and doing what the Torah says. So why must Yeshua be immersed of Yochanan in order for Yeshua to fulfill all righteousness? Well, Yeshua is recognizing and he's honoring John the Baptist as being the legitimate priest in Israel. And that is because the office of the priesthood had become corrupted. And so the beginning of the corruption of the Zadok line followed Onias III because he got killed. And from there, we have the beginning of the Greek influence upon the temple system, upon the office of the high priesthood, and upon Jerusalem. And this Greek influence was from the Greek Seleucids. And so ultimately, we have initially something that you're going to know and have more information about today, and that is the events surrounding the celebration of Hanukkah, wherein the details of this is in the book of Maccabees, where a Greek Seleucid king rose up, which was prophesied in the book of Daniel, that he would change times and seasons. In other words, this is a reference to, among other things, that he would change the calendar that was kept in Israel. And so the Zadok priests were faithful in keeping the calendar in Israel that, according to the beliefs of the Qumran community, that this calendar was originally given to Enoch through the angel Uriel. And this is specifically mentioned in the book of 1st Enoch. So that being the case, then what was given to Enoch, and then the calendar itself, its origin is divine. So I'm one of the people who often refer to this calendar as the Zadok priestly calendar. I make reference to it being a Zadok calendar. And when you call it and give it a name, a Zadok calendar, the inference is they're the ones that originated the calendar. But actually, that is not so. They were just the ones that were faithful to keep it and were zealous to maintain it. And this calendar was so important to them that they wrote in detail what it was and how it worked. And the details of it was part of what was found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. And this is one of several books that is available where you can get the English translation of all the scrolls and the fragments. So you can see there's quite a bit of scrolls and fragments because in order for this book to tell us the information, it's over 600 pages. So if you're going to understand what was in all the scrolls, then you got a little bit of reading and studying to understand a lot of the details of it. But the details of the calendar are in the scrolls, and in First Chronicles in chapter 28, we have the following in verse 11. Then David gave to Solomon his son the pattern of the porch, the houses thereof, the treasuries, the upper chambers. Verse 12, the pattern of all he had by the Spirit. And then it says in verse 13, and for the courses of the priests and of the Levites. So the pattern that David gave to Solomon began to be practiced and implemented in Solomon's temple. And so who was the first priest in Solomon's temple? It was Zadok. So it was the Zadok priest that was given the courses of the priest, which was followed in Solomon's temple. And so Solomon's temple is the original temple. And the temple that was in the first century, it's sometimes referred to by historians as Herod's temple because Herod made improvements to it. But that temple was not the original temple. The original temple got destroyed, and through the efforts of Ezra and Nehemiah, they came back and rebuilt the temple. And so that second temple wasn't exactly like the first temple. So if we're going to go back to the beginning and study the beginning, we need to study Solomon's temple and its layouts and the pattern of things that David gave to Solomon. And so the coarsely priestly courses, they were then followed and kept and preserved in the Dead Sea Scrolls, because the cycle of the calendar, there's many cycles that were followed and kept, but the primary one was the 6-year cycle. And it specifically says in year 1 of the cycle, week 1, this is the priestly course that's serving. In year 2 and week 1, this is the priestly course that's serving. In year 3. So it's not only keeping the yearly calendar itself, but you have to keep it on the appropriate cycle, and that's the only way that you kept the priestly courses in sync. So the details of this and exactly how it worked is in the scrolls, and it's preserved by the Zadok priests. So when the Greek corruption came in, following the rule and reign of Antiochus Epiphanes IV, the Greek Syrian or the Greek Seleucid king that came after him, he made a deal with the Maccabees that in exchange for their military support, that the Greek Seleucid king would recognize the Maccabees as having the office of the high priesthood. So they were also called the Hasmoneans. And so the first Maccabean Hasmonean priest was Jonathan, one of the 5 sons of Mattathias. And the Maccabean Hasmonean priestly dynasty was in Israel for around approximately 110 years. And then it was at that time that King Herod came and the Romans came, and they had the influence over the temple and the office of the high priesthood. But with the Greek corruption, the Greek calendar came into the temple system. And the Greek calendar is, and that is the Greek Seleucid calendar, is in essence the same as the Babylonian calendar, but it had Greek names for the months after the Greek gods, instead of in Babylon, the names of the month was the Babylonian gods. And so, because time is holy, it was a very serious thing that there was a corruption of time, because the belief system by the Qumran community was the things that they were doing and the time that they were keeping, they were doing it in conjunction with heaven, in conjunction with the heavenly tabernacle, in conjunction with the praise that the heavenly angels give to the God of Israel. So they were very, very careful, and they desired as it says in the Torah, to keep the camp clean. And so this is why they were so stringent in doing mikvahs and wanted to maintain ceremonial cleanliness, is because they wanted the camp clean, and so that the angels in the Spirit of God would be with them and present in their services, particularly the Sabbath services. So there's something in here in the Dead Sea Scrolls. It's called Songs of the Sabbath Service. And one interesting thing that was in the scrolls is they say that David wrote psalms for each day of the year, and even more than that. So the 150 psalms that we have in our Bible, the Dead Sea Scrolls, says that David wrote many more than that, but he wrote psalms that corresponds to the calendar year. So that claim is made in the scrolls. So given that that claim is made in the scrolls, the question becomes, did they make it up, or was it true? Because if it was true, we don't have preserved for us all of those psalms in our Bible. And if we don't, the question is, why not? And furthermore, we have wherein in our Bibles, in Leviticus, in chapter 23, that is the chapter that details and enumerates for us the festivals. And that being the case, if we look at Leviticus in chapter 23, we see that in the listing of the festivals, of course, the last one that's mentioned is the Feast of Tabernacles. And so in Leviticus chapter 23, verses 41 to 43, it says, "You shall keep it a feast unto the Lord 7 days in the year. It shall be a statute forever. You shall celebrate it in the 7th month. You shall dwell in booths 7 days. All that are Israelites born shall dwell in booths, that your generations may know that I made the children of Israel to dwell in booths when I brought them out of the land of Egypt." Now, in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and I'm going to be reading to you from, I guess this is 4Q 365. So it says, "In shelters you shall dwell 7 days. Every citizen of Israel shall dwell in shelters," or booths, "so that your descendants may know that I made your ancestors to live in shelters or booths when I brought them out of the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God." Well, that is Leviticus chapter 23, verse 43. But in our Bibles, in Leviticus chapter 23, basically the chapter ends. It says, "And Moses declared unto the children of Israel the feast of the Lord." But here in the scrolls, it continues. And it says, after mentioning about the Feast of Tabernacles, it says, "Then Moses spoke of the festivals of the Lord to the children of Israel. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Command the children of Israel, saying, When you come to the land that I'm about to give you as an inheritance, and you shall dwell securely, bring wood for the whole burnt offering and for all the work of the house that you shall build for me in the land, arranging the wood on the altar, holding the burnt offering, the calves also of the wood, for Passover sacrifice, for communion offerings, for thank offerings, for freewill offerings, for whole burnt offerings, and for the doers, for all the work of the house. They shall bring after the festival of new oil. Let them bring wood 2 by 2 in their tribes. Those who bring offerings on the first day, Levi and Judah. On the second day, Benjamin and Joseph. On the third day, Reuben and Simeon. On the fourth day, Issachar and Zebulun. On the fifth day, Gad and Asher. On the sixth day, Dan and Naphtali. So, in our Bibles, the festivals end with Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles, in Leviticus chapter 23. But in the scrolls, it continues and it talks about bringing the wood. It talks about the festival of new oil. It talks about the festival of new wine. And it tells that over a 6-day period that the tribes are to bring the wood. And on each day, 2 tribes are to bring the wood. Now, that being the case, let's go to the book of Nehemiah in chapter 10. And this is an example I'm going to give to you that there were breadcrumbs that was left in our Bibles regarding references to the priestly calendar that's in the Dead Sea Scrolls. And so here is one of those breadcrumbs. In Nehemiah chapter 10, verse 34, it says, "And we cast the lots among the priests, the Levites, and the people for the wood offering, to bring it into the house of our God," i.e. the temple, "after the houses of our fathers, at the time appointed, year by year," in other words, at a specific time in the year, "to burn upon the altar of the Lord our God." Now catch this. "As is written in the Torah." This says that the wood offering that was brought year by year, that it's written when you're supposed to do it in the Torah. Well, in our first 5 books, there's nowhere in our first 5 books where it says when you're supposed to bring the wood offering. But Nehemiah says it's in the Torah. It's written in the Torah. So either we have an error in Nehemiah, or it was written in the Torah. Well, here in the Dead Sea Scrolls, when it's mentioning about the festivals, I just read to you, it mentions the wood offering, and it mentions when it's supposed to be brought, and what tribes are supposed to bring it, on what days. So the designated time in the scrolls to bring the wood offering is the 6th month in days 23 to 28. That is the days. And on the first day, we have Levi and Judah. The second day, Benjamin, Joseph, and so forth. All right, so let me show you another breadcrumb. And this is going to come from the book of Haggai. And we're going to look at chapter 1, Haggai chapter 1. And it says in verse 7, "Thus says the Lord, consider your ways. Go up to the mountain and bring wood and build the house, and I will take pleasure in it, and I will be glorified, it says the Lord." So here we're told that the people was supposed to bring wood to the temple. And then ultimately we're told that this was done. It says in verse 14, "And the Lord stirred up the spirit of Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, governor of Judah, and the spirit of Joshua, the high priest, and the spirit of all the remnant of the people. And they came and they did the work in the house of the Lord of hosts." So they did what they were told to do, and part of what they were told to do was to bring wood. Now look at the last verse of Haggai chapter 1. After we're told they're supposed to bring wood, then they did it. In the last verse of Haggai chapter 1, that is verse 15, it says, the 24th day of the 6th month. Well, that is the day right here in the scrolls that they were supposed to bring the wood. So this is a hint and an indication that this calendar was followed by Nehemiah. This calendar was followed by Haggai. This was the calendar that I'm now going to show you and ending up this particular session. This is the calendar that was followed by the children of Israel in the wilderness. So if this calendar was being followed by Nehemiah, if Haggai makes reference to it, the origin of the calendar isn't the Zadok priests. They were just faithful to maintain and keep that which already was before they had their priesthood. So now people say, and they like to say, well, okay, that all this is nice, but like I want to see it in the Torah. Okay, so we're going to see it in the Torah now. In Exodus chapter 16, we have a narrative here, and I'm going to go over this narrative for you. It says in Exodus 16, verse 1, "And they took their journey from Elam, and all the congregation of the children of Israel came into the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elam and Sinai." And now we're going to give a date that they arrived there. "On the 15th day of the second month after their departing out of the land of Egypt." Well, on the priestly calendar, the months don't have names. And notice that the second month is just called the second month. It doesn't have a name. And so the names that are referenced in the Tanakh, or at least in the Torah, are Canaanite names. But the priestly way to refer to the months is month 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Same way with the days of the week. The days of the week is day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we have Shabbat. All right, so they arrived there on the second month of the 15th day. Now verse 2. "And the whole congregation of the children of Israel murmured against Moses and Aaron." Now what day are they murmuring against Moses and Aaron? Well, the same day they arrived. The second month and the 15th day. Verse 3. "And the children of Israel said unto them," well, what day are they having this conversation? The same day that they arrived, the second month and the 15th day. And verse 4, "Then said the Lord unto Moses," well, what day is he speaking to Moses? On the same day they arrived, the second month and the 15th day. And so on the second month and the 15th day, the Lord says to Moses, "Behold, I'm going to rain bread from heaven for you, and the people will go out and gather a certain rate every day, that I may prove them whether they're walking my Torah or not." And then it says in verse 7, he's telling them, "Now in the morning, you're going to see the glory of the Lord." So he's telling them that the next day, they're going to see the glory of the Lord. So they arrived on the second month and the 15th day. But the next day, in the morning, they're going to see the glory of the Lord. So now that is the second month and the 16th day. They're going to see the glory of the Lord. Now if you go down to verse 10, Exodus 16, verse 10, it says, "It came to pass as Aaron spake unto the whole congregation of the children of Israel, that they looked toward the wilderness, and behold, the glory of the Lord appeared in the cloud. And the Lord spoke unto Moses, saying," so now he's speaking to Moses the next day after they arrived. That is the second month and the 16th day. So now on this day, he's speaking to them, and he says, "In the morning," in verse 12, "In the morning you'll be filled with bread, and you'll know that I am the Lord." Well, that's the next day. So the day that they're going to start to be filled with bread, he's going to rain bread from heaven. That's what we call the manna. That the manna is going to begin on the second month and the 17th day. So then we're told in verse 22, "It came to pass that on the 6th day they gathered twice as much bread as what they did on the other days." All right, now I don't mind. Even though I got straight A's in school, I'm going to count on my fingers, okay? Okay, so we are told here that the manna is going to start on the 17th, okay? So 6 days, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. So we had the double portion on the second month and the 22nd day. And now we're told in verse 23, he said unto them, "This is that which the Lord has said, tomorrow is the rest of the holy Sabbath." So what day is tomorrow? It's going to be the 23rd. It's the second month and the 23rd. So in this narrative, on this calendar, the second month and the 23rd day is the Sabbath. So in the priestly calendar, as enumerated in the Dead Sea Scrolls, they say, these are the Sabbaths for month 1. These are the Sabbaths for month 2. So the Sabbath for month 2 is day 2, 9, 16, 23rd, and 30. Those are the days of the second month that the scrolls say is our Sabbath days. So in the scrolls, it says every single year on the second month and the 23rd day is a Sabbath. And on this Torah narrative, the second month and the 23rd day is a Sabbath. Now, on what we call the calendar that Judaism follows today, which is really a Babylonian calendar, I'll give you a website for this because I actually went and did this. So the website is hebcow.com. So that's the first three words of Hebrew, H-E-B, then the first three letters of Hebrew, H-E-B, the first three letters of calendar, C-A-L. So hebcow.com. And you put in a date, a Babylonian date. So the second month on the Babylonian calendar is ER. So you put in the second month ER, the 23rd day, the same day here that said it's a Sabbath. And you put in any year. And no matter what year you put in, if you convert it to our calendar, it's never a Sabbath. There's not one year that it's a Sabbath. But here, we're told the second month and the 23rd day is a Sabbath. And on the priestly calendar, every year it's a Sabbath. So this, to me, is Torah evidence that they're using this calendar. And look, we don't have no Zadok priests when the children of Israel were in the wilderness. So what calendar are they using that the second month and the 23rd day is a Sabbath? Well, it was the calendar that was given to Enoch. That was handed down from Enoch. That was followed by Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But when the children of Israel went into Egypt, they stopped following that calendar. They followed the calendar that Egypt followed. They followed the calendar that Pharaoh followed. And what was that calendar? It was a 13-month calendar. So now they're following that calendar in the God of Israel because they're going to be celebrating the festivals when he brings them out, right? They came out on Passover, and then they're going to be celebrating the festivals of Leviticus 23 for the 40 years in the wilderness. Well, he wants them to celebrate the festivals in the wilderness at the right time. So has to get them back on the right calendar. So this is why he says to them, and look, in Exodus chapter 12, verse 1, the Lord spoke unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt. This commandment was given while they were still in Egypt. He says in verse 2, this month shall be unto you the beginning of month. It shall be the first month of the year to you. So actually in Hebrew, this month is Zeh Hodesh. And I looked it up. There's only 3 verses in the Tanakh that has Rosh Hodesh. 3 verses. And this is one of the 3 verses that has Rosh Hodesh. So this says in Hebrew, Zeh Hodesh, this month, Rosh Hodesh. This month is Rosh Hodesh. And it shall be the first. The word first is Rishon, which Rishon comes from Rosh. Okay, so what does the word Rosh mean? Well, if you look up everywhere where the Hebrew word Rosh is translated in our Bibles, it's translated as chief, preeminent. When you have the phrase, the top of the mountain, the word top is Rosh. So Rosh means that which is the premier, the most important, the most significant. So even though you're all sitting in here, the most important person may be sitting over here. Or the most important person may be sitting over here. The most important person may not be, if I put you on a line, the very first person in the line. Rosh means the most important thing. So all that this verse is saying in Hebrew is, of the 12 months of the year, the first month is more important than the other months. It's the Rosh of the months. This month, Rosh Hodesh, this month is the most important of the months. But because of how we've been trained, when we look on a calendar that's put out by Judaism, when we have the day of new moon, on the calendar they follow, the day of the new moon is the first day of a new month. And so on the Babylonian calendar, new moon is equated with the first day of a new month. Okay, but this just says that the first month is the most important of the month. This verse does not say that the new moon is the first day of a new month. It just says that the first month is the most important of the months. And so the new moon is a biblical festival. The new moon is a festival that's to be celebrated. It was celebrated by the Qumran community. Yeah, we got heaven confirming it, right? AI heaven was tuning in.
It's everywhere.
That's everywhere. Even heaven, even AI knows it. So like new moon is new moon. So if I go outside and tonight's new moon, right up there, it's new moon. Now, what do I call the day that I'm breathing today? Do I call it, January 12th? Do I call it February 20th? Do I call it, June the 5th? Whatever day it is on your calendar, it is what it is, but it ain't going to change that if you physically look up at the sky that it's new moon. So new moon is new moon. So when new moon is new moon, that's when you celebrate new moon. But just because there's a new moon, it doesn't mean that I have to designate the day that I'm standing and breathing here is the first day of a new month. But that is the way it was done on the Babylonian calendar. All right, so I wanted to share with you a couple of these things, that the calendar that is in the Dead Sea Scrolls, there are breadcrumbs in reference to it throughout the scriptures. I didn't show you all the examples. And we can derive a breadcrumb to it here in the Torah in Exodus chapter 16. And then I want to end by the God of Israel affirming the authority that he gave to the Zadok priests in Ezekiel in chapter 44 and verse 15. Ezekiel 44 verse 15, that the priests, the Levites, the sons of Zadok, they kept the charge of my sanctuary when the children of Israel went astray to me. Verse 23, they, the sons of Zadok, they shall teach my people the difference between the holy and the profane, and cause them to discern between the unclean and the clean. And in Torah controversy, verse 24, they, the Zadok priests, they're going to stand in judgment. And they, the Zadok priests, they will judge it according to my judgments. So he didn't say the Sanhedrin of the first century or the rabbis are going to make a ruling according to the majority. He said they, the sons of Zadok, they will keep my laws, they will keep my statutes, and they will keep my assemblies, or they will keep my Moedim, or they will keep my festivals, and they will hallow my Sabbath. So the God of Israel acknowledges the authority of the Zadok priest to make rulings and teachings of the Torah when there's controversy about how you follow the Torah. And he acknowledges the authority of the Zadok priest to tell us when to keep the festivals. And so here we have the view of the God of Israel explicitly in Ezekiel 44. And then we have a reference to the calendar that's mentioned in the Dead Sea Scrolls being followed in Exodus 16. And then we have in Numbers chapter 10, verse 34, it's telling us that when you celebrate the wood offering is written in the Torah, but it's not written in our a Masoretic text, but we are told when to follow the wood offering at what particular time from the calendar in the Dead Sea Scrolls. So one of the things I wanted to convey and affirm to you that there is a conflict, a religious dispute among the Jewish people in the first century that had been going on for, I'm rounding off, 175, 200 years. And you have the authority of the Zadok priests. Their authority is being challenged by the corrupt temple system. Their authority is being challenged by the Pharisees and thus the Sadducees as well. And this dispute centered on authority. And so in order to understand why the dispute was over authority, you need to understand the history of the office of the high priesthood. That's why I went over that with you in the seriousness to the God of Israel of that office, and that he designated that the people would be taught Torah from that office, and those that helped and supported the high priest. It was so serious that we have a Torah portion about it, and what line would have the authority in the office of the high priesthood. That is Eleazar Phineas. We're being told why God gave him an eternal priesthood, and then down through Phineas's line is Zadok the priest, and ultimately those Zadok priests had that office, but then they fled when the office of the high priesthood got corrupted in the days of the Greek Seleucids. They fled and they established a community in the Qumran. They preserved, among many other things, the calendar. You see, the Dead Sea Scrolls is way more than the calendar, okay? So part of the reason why I want to give more fuller information and how the various things is related to the New Testament is because I don't want the Dead Sea Scrolls to be labeled Dead Sea Scrolls equal calendar. And then you either are interested in it or not interested in it. That is way too narrow to view the Dead Sea Scrolls and their significance and their importance. What the people there believed, I believe, and we're going to go over with this here in the ensuing sessions. I believe it was the Jews of the Qumran community that became, after Yeshua resurrected from the dead, the 3,000 Jews that were saved on the day of Pentecost. And so when you read your New Testament, try to understand your New Testament, we need to realize that one of the things you're reading about is a Jewish religious dispute. You need to know the origin of the dispute, what the things were regarding the dispute, and so you can help put everything into context to help you better understand your faith and how you walk it out. So this is going to conclude session number 5, and we're going to take a 15-minute break, and we'll come back for our next session. Okay? Thank you.